Hey, this is SJ, and I'm here with Dr. Kate, and you are listening to the Q Academy, where we talk about all things queer. So go ahead and grab a cup of coffee and get ready to learn. Oh my gosh, Dr. Kate.
Hey.
This is our very first episode of the Q Academy. I
was not prepared for that.
Well, I have my little audio board here, so we will have some great audio sounds through the episode, but I really am so excited, and this has been a long time coming.
I know, we've been talking about this for a while before we were actually able to sit down and do it.
Yeah, and since we're both, professors in some sort of capacity, one way or the other, this is
I groaned because the new semester is starting, and that's just overwhelming.
Yeah, it is, and so this is actually kind of the perfect time to start this, because a lot of stuff has been happening.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really want to do first is kind of introduce ourselves and say why the Q Academy is important to us and kind of what we're doing. So if you want to go ahead and go first, Dr. Kate.
I mean, so for me, the idea of the Q Academy really kicked off through a number of our conversations talking about what it's like to be a member of the queer community and some of the discrepancies that exist within us, but also finding ways to create an opportunity for voice and advocacy.
Yes, most definitely. And this is something that I have been wanting to do for a really long time. Because I am on my own journey in regards to the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think that in order to develop my own story, I want to be able to help others develop theirs or answer questions and give a lot of correct information, because there is a lot of incorrect information out there.
Absolutely. And I think it's important too to recognize that I don't know that anyone's journey is ever fully finished, right? That we're always sort of evolving and working towards the best versions of ourselves. So, and that's not to minimize the journey that you've been on, but also just thinking about we are all in this, especially political climate that we're in, sort of looking at what does it mean to me right now, and what does it mean for the greater community as a whole as we're figuring out and defining ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And so those are some topic areas that we're going to talk about coming up in season 1, because we can actually say this is episode 1 of season 1, which is mind-blowing to me. It kind of like sends a surge of energy through my brain. But also within the Q Academy series, we're going to be doing some human interest stories. We're going to have some guests on, some educators, those in high-level CEO positions, those that are active in the queer community, and really kind of wanting to expand our listening audience, and then eventually have listeners come in and share their stories as well.
Definitely.
So I think it's also important for our listeners to understand our background. So I will introduce myself again. I'm SJ. I have a PhD in special education. More importantly, I'm going to start with my pronouns, because I think that's something that we should do, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my pronouns are she, they. And as we go on this journey together, we will understand why they are she, they, and they might, I don't know, develop or change. Who knows, right? Journey is always changing, like you said, Dr. Kate. But I have my PhD in special education. I've been working with marginalized and diverse populations, not only with disabilities, but also when it comes to cultural diversity, linguistic diversity. So I've been in the field for about 10 years, and really kind of working over the years with members in the community, especially teenagers and young adults.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the work that you've been doing and continue to do, because it's so important.
Thank you.
And sort of the level of safety that I feel in acknowledging that. And I think that's one of the challenges that we face as members of the community too, right? So my name is Dr. Kate. I have a doctorate in counseling and school psychology. So I have my PsyD. My pronouns are she, they. But I find that that really is evolving as I'm sort of leaning more into that. But more specifically, I tend to be very cautious around who I acknowledge that they pronoun around. And I'm finding myself sort of filtering a little bit more. Like I was much more comfortable with it over the summer. And now that the academic year is kicking back up, I'm not necessarily introducing that. And I feel like that's sort of a big part of one of the challenges that we face as members of the community. So I think it's important to also acknowledge that one of the reasons I think that I'm a little less comfortable with acknowledging that they pronoun, at least within my professional context, is I work at a small liberal arts Catholic university. And just sort of what that means in terms of, I grew up Catholic. I think that's also a really important part of my identity and sort of how I've evolved into the person I am today. But the level of fear, I guess I would just sort of acknowledge around like not feeling fully able to be my authentic self in that sort of context and some of the struggle that's faced. That I've faced in that.
I was going to say, let's dive a little bit deeper into what you're talking about, because I find the same thing, but in a much different context. So I did, Dr. Kate and I spent a lot of time together this summer, and I felt more comfortable being interchangeable, right? And maybe focusing on using they as my pronoun rather than she, and kind of feeling it out, right? Because it's all about like, how does it really make you feel? And as soon as I came back to my institution, now I work at a state university. Okay. So much different climate, much different environment than Dr. Kate.
Is it though?
Well, let me get into that. So as soon as I came back, I was like, yeah, I'm going to change the pronouns on my email signature, and, my LinkedIn pronouns are she, they. But I held that first class and I was kind of like, I started immediately being into that female she brain mode, right? The way that I dress to go to class is completely different. Now, of course, it's not completely different, but I find myself having more of a feminine edge now when I go, right? Because, yeah, it's not, I don't give a shit about what my students think, but it's more of a representation of the faculty and staff. Now, I have faculty and staff that are very supportive. We have one of the largest LGBTQ centers within the entire state that I teach in. However, and it could be the community.
We should acknowledge that you teach in the South.
Yes. So I do teach in a southern state. Yeah. We're not going to quite yet. But if you're listening and you know SJ, you know me as SJ, then you know where I teach. And so it is
same.
Yeah. It's it's different. And I didn't think after like several months of really, and we traveled too, of really being comfortable with developing my pronoun as they, to come back and shift more to the she. So you're right, Dr. Kate. I think there is something to say that maybe a private religious university is not that much different than a state university. It depends on the community and the area that it's in.
I think you're right. I think one of the challenges for me, this is an institution that I've been affiliated with for a really long time, so I think that's also another layer. I work with folks that I've known for over a decade. So it's really it would be like coming out again. And what does that mean? So not only do I face the religious affiliation or the concern around that, even though our mission suggests that it would be very supportive, right? Part of our mission is to care for each person, right? And yet, again, people who have known me for, well, frankly, since 2012. And it's like, so what would it mean? And that's like one of the struggles that I think anyone within our community faces, whether they're coming out again, if you will, or they're coming out for the first time and they're faced with needing to share this very vulnerable and personal part of themselves, but that fear of rejection, right? And that's just like mind-blowing to me, that this is something that it's one of those invisible identities can cause us so much shame. And that is absolutely, in my opinion, socially constructed. And one of my hopes through this podcast is to deconstruct or work to deconstruct that construction so that it's no big deal, because it shouldn't be.
No, you're right. It shouldn't be a big deal, but unfortunately, even in 2022, it's a huge deal. And you bring up a really good point. And I think to that point, we may ruffle some feathers with the Q Academy, but Dr. Kate and I have talked
Shocker.
about that it's okay to ruffle feathers, right? Even within our own community. And because we have some solid feelings on some solid topics that we are going to tackle this season. But it's all about a learning journey as well, because I'm still learning. I'm 43 and I'm learning a whole shit ton and still discovering my story and other stories and helping. So
right.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've been out since I was 16 years old and I just turned 40. And that idea that we're constantly still evolving and constantly learning and growing. And some of that might be just, the nature of who we are as humans, that we are open to that. Not everyone is, perhaps. But I think that's super important, that hopefully those that listen and spend time with us every week are also open to that learning as well. I teach counseling and school psychology, and I have been in the field working as a mental health provider since 2008 in one way or another.
So I want to introduce a quick topic, and actually let me set the scene. Dr. Kate and I were kayaking, and we were recalling a conversation that we had about multiple individuals that we interact with. And Dr. Kate said, "Do you know what this means?" And I can't remember the term. Can you remember the term, Dr. Kate? I can't remember, but however, let's use demisexual as an example. Okay, so we're going to get into sexual orientations, gender identifications,
it was omnisexual.
Okay. So, I don't know what that is, which there are a lot of things that I don't know. Yeah. So, we started having this conversation and look, we're only in our early 40s, but I consider myself, and I'm sure some elder gays might disagree, but I consider myself an older or elder gay. And growing up, we didn't have so many terms. We didn't have so many, and I hate calling them labels, but identifications, right? You were gay, you were lesbian, you were bisexual. Queer was not a thing when I was younger. It was a derogatory term, but now the community we're taking it back as maybe like encompassing. So some individuals identify as non-binary or NBs, and some identify as gender queer. So we started having this conversation about, and we're gonna piss some people off, but let's start it off right. Is why are there so many identifiers within the community? And I'm not negating anyone, and I'm not saying anyone, that no one should have an identification. But when some are so similar, so I believe Omni and Demi are very similar with like one little tweak, possibly.
So like here I am like Googling it, right? While in the middle of the conversation to try to understand what it was. And the question that I then raised to you when you and I were talking about it afterwards was, are we in essence creating or perpetuating some of the lack of understanding and embracing by creating so many different sort of subsets of our community that we can't even keep up with it ourselves. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's difficult, and I feel like then those individuals that get confused that are not part of the community, right? And they're trying their best to be supportive, and it's just, are we setting them up for failure as supporters, as allies, and are we making it more confusing? Do we just use one term gay? Do we just use one term queer? I mean, it's very confusing. And even as someone who is queer, I constantly get confused and I don't understand it. And I would like to understand it, and like I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that one person doesn't matter over the other person. This is not about the people. This is about the evolution of all of these identifiers and vocabulary and terms, and how did we get there? How did we get to that point?
Yep.
And it brings to point the intersectionalities of individuals, right? That just makes it even more, it just creates even more of a whirlwind.
I guess one of the biggest questions is, why do we need so many different labels for the same thing? And are we initially creating confusion by doing that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so let me ask you, Dr. Kate, if someone came up to you and asked you, how do you identify? We know what your pronouns are. You would say my pronouns are she, they. But how else would you identify?
How else would I identify? You mean as it relates to the LGBTQ population?
Sure. So like I would say, my name is SJ, my pronouns are she, they. I identify as gender queer. And for those that aren't familiar with gender queer, that means that some days I identify more as female, some days I identify more as male. In regards to kind of my portrayal and how I dress and how I act, I do feel that I have some type of gender, but I just am kind of back and forth between the binary and even non-binary. Some days I just feel like a human, so I equate that to gender queer. So and I'm a gay gender queer individual. See, it gets so difficult.
Yeah. I'm sitting here going, oh, so
this is a test. So you're being assessed on what correct vocabulary you will use.
Right. I don't even know. So I guess I identify more on the non-binary spectrum. I definitely don't feel like I fit really in a gender. I tend to dress more on the androgynous / male sort of side. Most of my, like, it's funny, I wear women's pants because I'm short as hell and I need that. But then I wear men's tops on top of that, or I will, like, I'm much more comfortable like in what would have previously been called a butch style of dress, right? Yeah. And that goes back to our other conversation of, when we were growing up, you were gay, and you were a lesbian, when you were either a lipstick lesbian, or a butch, and that was it. That's what you had, and the gay men in our world were either bears or fairies. Like, that's what we had.
Exactly.
Right?
It was very cut and dry.
It was very binary. You were either this or you were this.
Yeah.
But I also, at the same time, like, as much as I say, like, yeah, I tend to wear men's clothing most of the time, there is still, the way I wear said clothing has a softer edge to it, right? Like,
it does.
It's a bit, it's not super baggy. Like, you can see that I have some curves in there and that kind of thing. So that's sort of how because I guess there's a difference, right, between how we identify and then how we present, right? So our outward facing versus maybe how we feel inside, right?
Right.
you talked about how your clothing tends to shift depending on where you are. Mine doesn't really. I mean, obviously, if I'm going to work, theoretically, I'm dressing a little bit more professional, but that depends on if I feel like I want to be there or not.
Very true. Very true.
But my typical sort of fun professor look involves funny t-shirts, a blazer, and either jeans or khakis, and Vans or Doc Martens, depending on the season, right? Like there's, it's very sort of hipper side of quote mask presenting.
Well, and I kind of do that too, but I find like I'll wear a bracelet more or some type of like adornment. Is that the right term? Like something. But that's not necessarily femme. I mean, we've got Harry Styles bringing back pearl necklaces for men, and kind of like all of these style trends now are very back and forth between masculine and feminine. It's so interesting. And you talk about they're not baggy. Like you wear more fitted clothing. Now let's dive even deeper into the pool, right? I wear super baggy clothing because I have body dysmorphia because of my issues with gender identification. So I wear baggy clothes so you can't see my curves and you can't see my chest. And so that's representative no matter where I am. And I'm really trying hard to change that. But it's part of the journey, part of the process. But I do think that it's not complicated, because that's not the right word. And diverse really isn't the right word, but I feel there are more pieces to the puzzle, so to speak, now than there were 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. There's more ways you can dress, more ways you can look, more ways you can present yourself internally and externally.
Which may speak to an evolution of society, and the embracing of those intersectionalities. But yet at the same time, going back to the concept of are we othering ourselves by creating all of these terms that seemingly mean the same thing? Like, if we have to look up, because another piece that led into this conversation was the difference between asexual and or agender versus non-binary, and we're like, does that essentially mean the same thing? I don't know, because here I am saying I don't necessarily feel like I have a gender, like I don't necessarily feel feminine, I don't necessarily feel masculine, I just am. But the little like small details between the differences in those terms can be really challenging. And I one of the things that happened in this conversation between the two of us was we were asking, like, are we essentially diminishing our efforts to become representative, or I can't remember the word that I want right now, valued, or help me with the word. What am I looking for?
This is like Wordle. I don't know.
I'm not having fun right now. By creating so many sort of like micro terms that mean the same thing,
right?
And essentially diluting, are we losing our validity, I guess? Are we minimizing our sort of bargaining power by almost looking like we don't know what we're talking about either? Like,
I mean, that's a really good point, honestly, because if we would have to go into a war of words or a war of explanation over why we should be valued as humans, as part of the LGBTQIA plus community, like, we get stuck. Because we don't know certain things, or we don't know certain terms, that could really be detrimental if you're on the outside looking in.
Because because it's almost like people who, like, I was saying before, people who are trying to be supportive, trying to keep up with us, are, at the same time kind of throwing their hands up in the air, being like, okay, like, I don't know.
I mean, is this why people say forget it? Is this why people don't take pronouns seriously? I mean, because there's such, I don't know. I say that because earlier today, I was watching some TikToks, taking a break from work.
TikTok.
Watching some TikToks, and I saw there was a girl's t-shirt, and it was a pronoun t-shirt. And I was like, oh my God, I love that t-shirt. Let me try to look for it online. So I was doing kind of like a Google image search and kind of trying to find it. I didn't find it, spoiler alert, but I started finding all these other t-shirts saying my pronouns are was and were, and or like totally like bashing on the whole pronoun development. And so it's kind of like we need to talk about this because there are some people out there, because of all of this going on and all these new terms that are making a joke of it when it's obviously not a joke. So how do we get that out of people's heads and let them know that no, our identity is important, our pronouns important, you know, how do we do that? Because I don't want to see those t-shirts when I go on there and they're making fun of what people's pronouns are.
Well, this circles back to a conversation I was having as part of my university diversity council. I'm on the university-wide committee for DEI, and we ended up getting into a conversation around Black Lives Matter as part of it, right? And one of the biggest backlashes of Black Lives Matter was then All Lives Matter, and the fact that that diminishes the purpose, right, of what the Black Lives movement is trying to say and was saying, and, and then it's devolved even further to Police Lives Matter. And again, I say that as someone who has family members who have been in the police force or are in the police force. So I have tremendous respect for those that serve in that capacity. But at the same time, that diminishes or takes away from the individuals who are standing for Black Lives Matter, right? And then there's now Firemen's Lives Matter, and however many now iterations that are going to come out of that. Yes, of course they do, right? But the purpose of Black Lives Matter was to say, like, we need to hold up this marginalized community until they have this, until there is equity. That was the purpose of Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
It boiled down to the most simple term as a very white Irish person, right? Like, that is my understanding of, like, we need to support this community that has been marginalized and repressed since the beginning of our country's history and beyond, right?
Absolutely.
And we need to hold them up. We need to, and hold them up might not even be the right term, but
support,
level the field for them, right? Give them those supports so that they don't have to face some of the challenges that they have to face, because it just shouldn't be that way, right?
Well, and the violence too, and and this came out when all of the police violence against Black men was occurring, Black women, Black children. I mean, and you're right though. We started with Black Lives Matter and it turned into other groups, and that's not the point. Right. Because those groups aren't marginalized and they are not experiencing the terror and the violence and the unsafety. Like, we're not safe until we're all safe. Well, we need to keep certain populations safe because that's what they deserve.
Well, and if we think about our Black trans women are the most victimized members of our population for a number of reasons, right? And unfortunately, that comes straight out of racist ideals and should not be the case.
Well, and we've had a lot over the past 2 years, a lot of murders and a lot of deaths of Black trans women. I have one specific poster in my office that says Black trans lives, and it's in support of, because I feel that is one population that does not get enough exposure, enough cover on the news.
Absolutely.
Let's not get into the media quite yet. That's like season 7, episode 256.
There's some.
But no, you're right. I think these are great conversations that we're having, and ones that we will continue to have. Dr. Kate and I talked about what we want our listener demographic to be, and we want it to be everyone, honestly. I mean, yes, we are not catering, but we want to kind of develop episodes for the community, for the queer community, but for everyone to listen, because I think it's important that everyone becomes educated.
Mhm.
We are from a background of education, so we're going to have the data. We are going to talk about news articles. We're going to talk about different things that we have found that are important for everyone to understand and to kind of want to listen to. So you don't have to be queer to listen to us. You don't have to be anything. You just have to have two ears, and oh God, I shouldn't say that. I just realized
No.
that. No. Oh my God.
No, not at all.
Why didn't
See,
you
but this is the
stop
perfect
me?
well, because I was, like, processing it, and I was like, "Oh, SJ."
No.
But then this goes right into another piece of it, right? So I'm sitting here thinking about, like, that, like, it's not because
Oh my God, because I have a disability studies background. Oh, see, this is what happens. And you know what? I'll probably keep this in because, I make
Mhm.
mistakes. I really do make mistakes
No,
all the
but
time. I'm
we
human.
we both do.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
and
But that's a perfect example of what can happen, right? Is we
yes,
make these, we have these expressions or these euphemisms, and we don't recognize that that's actually marginalizing and serving as a microaggression to
yes,
other individuals who may not have the ability to hear us with two ears, but are still engaged in the conversations, and we want to hear from those folks too. And I think that's sort of where you were going. Is that
yes,
yes, we are the Q Academy, and we have sort of a unique sort of LGBTQ plus vibe, but we're going to be talking about different types of disability and other types of marginalized communities. Um,
absolutely.
you had asked me earlier, like, sort of how I identify in the world. And I think that that's also an important thing to sort of bring into the conversation, is that in addition to being a member of the queer community, I am a person with a disability. And we've had many conversations about what that's like, because I am someone that has a visible disability, meaning that you can see it. And not everyone does. Many people have invisible disabilities, and we'll have folks that talk about that as well. But that creates sort of as we think about the intersectionality, that has been something that has helped to shape and define who I am and how I exist in the world, and some of the experiences that I've had. Um, and we'll be talking about that too. So make sure, folks, that that we're not just talking about queer related issues. We're going to be talking about issues of all types of diversity. This is just a place to listen, learn, and laugh, because we laugh a lot, and we hope that you join us in that endeavor.
Yeah, see, I fumble and Dr. Kate grabs the ball and makes a clear touchdown. And that will happen many more times in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to thank you for sharing that about yourself.
Mhm.
Because in a podcast, you just hear our voices, you don't see us yet. Hopefully that's something we can do in the future, is have video attached to this.
Mhm.
But that's a really, I think, a great thing for you to include to our listeners. And so, because we want to have such a wide array of listeners
Mhm.
and supporters out there, gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do with the hate mail. It's gonna spiral me. So no hate
Well,
mail.
good thing it's coming to my PO box, so I
Oh,
can
good. So you can
filter it
filter
out.
it. You can filter it. You can
Mhm.
be like, "No, we didn't get any emails this week. We didn't get any
Nope,
complaints." Um,
nothing happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
that being said, if you have topics you want to hear about, if you have questions for Dr. Kate or myself, if you have questions when we have special guests or stories, if you want to share your story, please feel free to access those show notes and to visit our podcast. Our lovely pictures are up there of us laughing and
Yes.
our beautiful equipment. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I think that would be really great to hear from our listeners and kind of see what they're interested in, because we're here for the people. I mean, it's kind of corny, but we want to have topics that people are interested in. There's so many podcasts out there right now, and this could not turn into anything, but this could turn into everything.
Yep. And obviously we're hoping for the latter, but we need you to keep tuning in and subscribing and become an active member of our conversation, because we're just two people trying to engage in conversation with one another and with a larger community. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Dr. Kate, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for listening. I want you to stay safe, be kind to your mind. Remember, you are loved, and make someone smile.